Today's presentation will be about South Korea. I hope you enjoy it. Korea is one of the fastest growing OECD countries. Between 1987 and 2012, during the so-called period of the Sixth Korean Republic, the Korean GDP increased from $358 billion to $1.4 trillion, which is an increase of 390%. In addition, the GDP per capita increased from $8,625 to $27,000, which is an increase of almost 324%. The annual GDP growth during the past 25 years averaged 5.7%. The only year during that period in which Korea experienced GDP contraction is 1998, during the Asian financial crisis. Also, despite the growth slowed down after year 2000, it still remains at around 4%, higher than most other G20 countries. Besides from increases in the standard of living, the increases in GDP have also led to higher money demand. A money demand equation shows that for a 1% increase in GDP, money demand would increase by 0.34%. This strong GDP growth is due to continuous advancements in both total factor productivity and labor productivity. During the same period, total factor productivity grew with an average of 3.7%, while labor productivity measured as hours worked per GDP by 5.2%. Still, there is still area for substantial improvement. Korea's labor productivity is lower than the OECD average and stands at 45% of the labor productivity in the US and 72% of the labor productivity in Japan. However, the gains from GDP growth have not been equally distributed across the Korean population. According to the OECD, income inequality as measured by the Gini coefficient has been increasing and in 2009 surpassed the OECD average. In addition, relative poverty, which is the share of the population that lives on less than half of the median income, increased to 15% in 2008. Still, unlike the EU, inequality increases are not correlated with rises in unemployment. Unemployment in Korea has remained stable and low at around 3.6% in the past 12 years. In addition, unemployment during the global financial crisis did not increase for a long period of time, and currently unemployment is back at previous levels. However, Anacon's law estimation implies that unemployment increases are very costly. A 1% increase in unemployment would be associated with a 1.8% decrease in GDP growth on average. Furthermore, the Korean Central Bank has successfully kept inflation rather stable in the past 12 years. The Korean Central Bank started targeting inflation in 1999 after the Asian financial crisis and has kept inflation in a band between 3 and 4% ever since. Still, a calculation of the Phillips curve suggests that the sacrifice ratio for inflation targeting might be quite high. For each % decrease in inflation, unemployment will increase by 2.4% and GDP will decrease by 4.3% on average. The Asian financial crisis had multiple profound effects on Korea's economy besides commitment to inflation targeting. Between 1964 to 1980, the Korean won was pegged against the USD, and between 1980 until 1997, it was heavily managed. After the Asian crisis, the won has been free floating. Currently, $1 trades for 1,058 won. That being said, the Korean government intervenes often on foreign markets to keep the value of the Korean won relatively low. This strategy is related to its position as an export-oriented economy. With the exception of the Asian financial crisis and the global financial crisis, Korea has run a balance of payments surplus of $4,868 million on average. Its main trading partners are China, the US, and the EU, while its main competitor is Japan. This graph depicting the won exchange rate versus the US dollar and the balance of payments of Korea with the US shows the expected relationship predicted by the J-curve theory. A devaluation of the won is followed by a short-run decrease in trade surplus. In the long run, however, exports increase and the balance of payments improves. And this is exactly what the Korean government aims for when it intervenes on the foreign exchange markets. Finally, after the Asian financial crisis, the public debt to GDP increased from 5% to over 30% of GDP. This is still low in comparison to Japan and the US, which is consistent with Korea's trade policy. Meanwhile, the Korean government has successfully kept a public surplus. The only year in which the Korean government ran a deficit is 2009 for the past 12 years. This was a part of a fiscal stimulus package during the global financial crisis. The government is currently discussing another stimulus package for the year of 2014. Such fiscal packages might have the necessary short-term effect on the Korean economy. The marginal propensity to consume of the Korean population is about 0.73, as estimated by a cost function, and increases in disposable income might have substantial short-term effects on GDP. Today's presentation will be about South Korea. I hope you enjoy it. Korea is one of the fastest-growing OECD countries. Between 1987 and 2012, during the so-called period of the Sixth Korean Republic, the Korean GDP increased from $358 billion to $1.4 trillion.